to the Carbon Circle, where we explore ideas and innovation driving a sustainable future. I'm your host, Roshan Rai, founder and CEO of Carbon Mandal. In this episode, Fungi as the Future, Cultivating Health, Wealth and Sustainability, we are joined by Jashid and Prithvi Kini, the dynamic duo couple behind Nuvedo, India's first homegrown gourmet and functional mushroom brand. Featured on Shark Tank, their journey blends science, sustainability, and purpose. From growing mushrooms on agricultural waste to creating a circular model that supports climate resilience, nutrition security, and rural livelihoods. If you're passionate about the intersection of business and sustainability, make sure to follow, rate, and subscribe the Carbon Circle. Your support helps us to keep bringing more inspiring conversations from change makers shaping greener future and a more resilient world. Let's dive in. So, hi and welcome to one and all who's listening to the podcast. So, today with us, we have Mr. Jashid and Prithvi from Nuvedo. We are going to talk about mushrooms, which is a very interesting topic for me personally as well, and everything that they do at Nuvedo. So, for the ones who are listening in, today's topic that we have chosen is fungi as the future, cultivating health, wealth, and sustainability, where we intend to explore mushroom cultivation as a climate solution, as a nutrition security, and economic opportunity for those who are interested in this particular subject. So we have picked roughly 5 topics to cover today. The first topic is, of course, the introduction to the guests themselves, which is introducing Prithvi and Jashid and their baby, which is Nuvedo. And the second topic we will cover is cultivating circularity, that is mushrooms turning waste into wealth. We'll explore how mushroom cultivation embodies circular economy principles and reshapes agri-value chains. From there on, we move to the third topic for today, which is economics of mushroom cultivation. We will likely touch upon a couple of questions there, and then we will look at the functional fungi as India's nutrition revolution. This is a very interesting topic because functional mushrooms are a slight different from the regular mushrooms that we today know. So perhaps Jashid and Prithvi will add more insights to that. And the last topic that we'll cover for today is consulting opportunities in the fungi revolution. So with all of these topics, we are going to have a very insightful conversation. We believe so. And the first question to both Prithvi and Jashid, I think Prithvi can start. So Prithvi, you went from working with quantum cryptography to co-founding India's premier mushroom brand. So can you take us back to that pivotal moment during the pandemic when you and Jashid together decided to live your successful careers and travel across India's farm and start Nuvedo?
Sure. Firstly, thank you, Roshan, for having us on this podcast. We met 3 years ago, and now a lot of things have changed and churned. So nice to be back here. Coming to our journey to begin with, pandemic did become one of the big, we call ourselves a pandemic story, but how that really happened was, I think both of us were looking to being something more sustainable, working especially with food systems, something that could heal not just people, but the planet as well, and something that had the synergy of these two. I wouldn't say there was one pivotal turning point, but there were multiple, successive incidents that kind of led us here. I think the beginning was to relook at our food systems, relook at the way we are consuming, as well as, how the planet affects us and how we kind of bounce that energy off each other. So while we were looking at food systems, looking at growing something sustainably, organic, ways of growing, we went and, volunteered across many farms across India. And we learned many ways in which traditional agriculture is being done, new age, methodologies, hydroponics, all of that, right? So we looked at a big gamut of it. And while we were doing that, it happened to be pandemic, people were sick. We ourselves were also using a lot of mushroom-based products from the US, from places abroad. And they were really helping, especially with Jashid, in terms of allergies, in terms of a lot of different aspects that were kind of maybe stress driven, maybe environment driven. We don't know, back then, a weird time. But all that happened, and it so happened that one of the turning points was, of course, like food. The second turning point was our own bodies and how we were responding to these mushroom based products. And the third turning point was the circularity of it. When we realized, of course, having a traditional piece of land, A, that was organic, B, that you had access to, and C, that actually you could yield from quite immediately, was practically impossible, because
Right.
either you need to have a lot of capital, you need to have, or wait for that land to turn organic and then start utilizing it. So at that point in time, mushroom cultivation kind of came to us, where we started kind of dabbling with it. We learned or did a course, and then kind of got entrenched into that field. And simultaneously, we were also using these products from the US, and we realized, okay, I'm sure there are farmers in India who are,
Doing
growing
this.
mushrooms, and we could buy them from it. But it turned out that there was nobody growing these mushrooms. The access to the environment or the market was also very sort of murky. There was not much understanding of these types and varieties as well. There was only button mushrooms that we could find.
Right.
So one thing led to the other. So there was, of course, a macro factor, the environment. There was our own internal journey, which was, finding the benefits of this. And the third was, of course, the biggest one, which was the ease to which we could get into that space. So yeah, it was a rabbit hole. And after that, curiosity sort of fueled it, learning a lot of interesting things that came out of it, in terms of even just being stuck at home and having to grow inside your house.
Inside your house.
Yeah, so I would say, yeah, you can say many things pushed us in that direction, and that's how we kind of said, okay, there is a need for a brand, there is a need for somebody being able to do this, being able to push the boundaries of what it means to grow mushrooms, and yeah,
Right.
I think the rest is it just kind of trickled
Lovely.
out.
So we heard Prithvi, your side of the story. I think it is also important that we hear Jashid's side of the story as well. So I mean, I was just curious. I was doing some reading up on the internet, and I came across that you guys found each other on the dating app.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
was this match made as a result of the common interest in mushrooms, or was it something that you and Jashid developed over a period of time?
I think that mushrooms came way later in the story, right?
Hmm.
And it's more the mushrooms finding us than us finding each other because of
Mushroom.
the mushrooms, I would say, you know. And I think Prithvi and I connected because of a bunch of things. And one was, I think, this shared love for adventure, right?
Hmm.
Which sort of shows why we took this path also, right? It's not something that's conventional
Yeah, the
to.
journey of an entrepreneur is always adventurous.
Absolutely. So that risk appetite to do something fun and adventurous is always something that we both shared.
Yeah.
And I think apart from that, we both share a like very deep love for nature, for being in nature, working with nature. And I think the third thing would be for fitness, wellness, and outdoor activities. Like to be outdoors. We like to spend time, doing trekking, hiking, swimming, whatever it may be that helps us connect with nature. And I think mushrooms sort of also fit these three things,
Hmm.
It was an interesting space that people haven't done the things that we want to do. So it was exciting. It's also natural. We get to see these beautiful, amazing organisms every day, right? Daily, we are seeing this nature. We're working so closely with nature. And in some sense, because we are working in the functional mushroom space, we are also sort of improving our own health and the health of our friends, family, and the planet, which is basically
Right.
why we started this business. So I feel like mushrooms found us and it ticked all the boxes and allowed us to do the things that we really love. So yeah, we are very lucky that way, you could say.
Amazing. I
But
mean,
for me personally, I think uh, I feel like this is me connecting back with my roots because two generations behind, you can say my grandfather was a farmer, right?
okay.
Our family was full of farmers, paddy farmers. And he quit farming because everybody around him started using pesticides and chemical inputs, and he didn't want to do that.
Hmm.
And he tried to grow without chemical inputs for the longest time until he died. He was growing just enough for our family, right? And that's where that's the thread sort of broke off. And I feel like it's
Re,
maybe in
re,
my DNA, and
realigning itself.
yeah, I'm just realigning with what my ancestors used to do in some sense.
Lovely. I mean, happy for both of you. I think everything fell in place. Must have been, something that was planned. as you call it, the universal calling.
Yeah, absolutely. Some things you
Right.
can't plan for. And I think that that break here that we took, we created space, right?
Right.
We feel like when you take a break here and you're looking for something, you're not really creating that space. You have to give a fully blank slate and full explore with your eyes and ears open and allow things to sort of come into your life. And that's precisely what happened with us.
True. Lovely to hear that background story, and also the point that you made that 2 generations before, your granddad was also into farming, and now you get an opportunity. Might be a different type of produce that you're growing presently. My next question is again related to mushroom itself. I mean, Nuvedo, the organization that you've built today, calls itself as India's first mushroom lifestyle brand. Now, what does that actually mean, and how does it differentiate you from the traditional agricultural companies or supplement manufacturers for that matter?
Right. So, in terms of, so when we say, mushroom lifestyle, when we're thinking about mushrooms, we always think about it from a point of view of a produce, right? Or something that, like at least whatever we've been exposed to in India, it's button mushrooms or oyster mushrooms, and these are things that you use as some sort of vegetable or some sort of ingredient in your kitchen. But when we're thinking about when Nuvedo is thinking about mushrooms, we're trying to bring that into all aspects of lifestyle and wellness. So when we think of that, we think of it in terms of how it could improve our day-to-day functioning, make it a better way to live our own lives. And that's not just through eating a certain food, but that could be through extracts or functional mushrooms that have these certain benefits that can make our lives better. So maybe it's to sleep better, or to be able to focus better, or to be able to have a better edge in your your activity. So when you're monitoring your activity, how do you kind of have better stamina? You're not very lethargic. So when we're looking at, I think the idea of Nuvedo was to look at mushrooms a little differently and incorporate it into different parts of lifestyle. Now, while our core product and our core focus area is on functional mushrooms, which help you to get an edge in these different aspects of life, and they're not necessarily just as food. When we took a look at lifestyle, we wanted to be beyond just also this, where we're doing education, we're doing awareness, where we're bringing people into the space, the microverse, through art, through foraging, through educational based workshops where we teach people how to grow mushrooms, and to be able to create a larger gamut of the way we look at this space. We're not looking at them, okay, we constantly as humans think of everything around us as something that, can we eat it? Can this be something that we can sustain? But how do we also get inspired by these people, by these organisms? How do we create better ways of looking at the world? And I know I need not be a mushroom farmer to be inspired by mushrooms, but I could be a photographer. I could be, somebody who's into art. I could be somebody who's just some, curious gardener. I'm giving, a gamut of examples, but the idea was to create this ecosystem and say, look, this ecosystem exists. Whoever wants to enter it in whichever part of their lifestyle, please, the doors are open. So that was the kind of idea when we started. And I think for 4 years down the line, we can say that we've been able to do a bunch of these different aspects and create that environment, including a mushroom festival, which we've done with 10 other people from the community. And I think it's been a very wholesome way or holistic way of looking at this whole ecosystem.
Right, yeah. And just to add to that, when we think of mushrooms, we think of only food, right? So there's 3 aspects to life or wellness. You can say physical, there's mental and emotional well-being, right? There's also emotional well-being, right? And emotional well-being can come from something like going and looking at mushrooms in the park, right? Or looking at amazing photographs of mushrooms, or learning how to grow your own mushrooms at home, right? Using those spent coffee grounds or those cardboard boxes, upcycling them to turn them into something that you and your family can eat. That could be what emotional well-being looks like. And with today's sort of wellness revolution sort of taking a front seat after COVID, we feel like mental and physical well-being gets all the attention and emotional well-being is not spoken about enough, right? So we are looking at mushrooms as a way to address all 3 of these, right? All 3 of these in in one shot, you can say.
Right. I mean, a comprehensive approach that you have taken there. I mean, when you talk about that, physical, mental. I think mental these days it is also spoken about, but emotional, the aspects are largely neglected. And when you're now trying to build a organization which kind of encapsulates the entire thing, that it's really fascinating to learn. And also to add to that, most of us we have. I mean, we learn about the five kingdoms, the animal, plantae, and all that. And when we hear fungi, the only thought that comes to our mind is food. The functional aspects of it is very rarely spoken, or not much information is today available. And I should give you guys the credit, because it was through, I think, Prithvi, when we had the first conversation, that I got to know the functional side of it. The extracts being used for mental wellness, or sleeping better, feeling better, focusing better. So these are all different areas which I had never thought of prior, because even when we go to the gyms, usually protein powders is what we get. We do not get to hear about the other supplements that is today available. We'll be talking more on that. But before we get to that point, I also want to ask a question in the direction, because you have created something that goes by name NuvoKisan, the program that works with over 200 rural entrepreneurs. So can you share a specific story on how one farmer's life changed through mushroom cultivation, and what this tells us about scalable rural employment models?
Right. See, when we started off, right, again, it's been 3 years since we last spoke. And when we initially started off, we wanted to have a model where we could scale up the cultivation side of things, because there's 2, 3 parts of our business, right? One is the genetics, which is basically what you grow. Then the cultivation side of how you grow it. And third is the extraction and formulation side of what do you do with the mushrooms, right? So the second part of it, which is basically the growing side, we wanted to work with a network of farmers, and we provide them with the technical inputs, allow them to grow the produce, and we buy it back from them, right? This was the initial idea, right? But as we progressed and we moved further into this space, we hit a lot of challenges, right? And like you rightly said, we are growing these mushrooms not just to eat, but it's also mainly used for nutraceutical extracts.
Right.
And when you work with products which are used for healing, there are certain specifications, right, in terms of quality. Be it the percentage of moisture or the amount of bioactive compounds inside this. So what we realized was that the key success factor in producing a really good extract is the quality of the input. If you don't have good mushrooms, no matter how well you process it, you're not going to get a good extract.
Correct.
Right? So we actually hit the wall with that model, because what was happening was, first thing was that quality control became a really big challenge, right? Quality control became a really big challenge, because when you're working with farmers who are not used to this kind of technical specifications for the final product, it becomes very challenging to make them understand why a 0.9% moisture and why a 2% moisture is very different, because from outside both look the same. Right? And he's getting more money for a slightly
For the
heavier
weight.
product.
Yeah.
For the wet weight.
Yeah.
So why dry it? Right? And contamination. So because of improper storage, a lot of the mushrooms that we were getting from them started having mycotoxins. So there was some level of contamination, inconsistencies in batches. Then we later realized that if we want to work with farmers, one of the key challenges is to come in with a liaison, right? So we wouldn't say that that model was as successful as we wanted to, because there was a lot of issues that we faced with the quality of the final product, and it was affecting the customer experience. So somewhere along this journey, we decided that a large part of our production has to be internal to sort of safeguard our production against any disruptions or any issues with the raw material. So we sort of pivoted that model and focused more on building our internal capacity so that we can hedge risk. Because tomorrow, if I go and the farmers run into some issues with contamination, then my entire supply chain gets disrupted, right? So the farmer model sort of had to take a back seat, but we are happy to say that we found a workaround with this, right? Rather than going to individual farmers, we want to work with quasi-government agencies in setting up mushroom farms where they can be employed, right?
Okay.
Where more things are under our control, where there are SOPs, where there are QA/QC parameters, which trained professional, qualified professionals can handle, and farmers can take care of what they do best, which is growing the mushrooms under
Right.
the supervision of a qualified technical, person.
Right.
So that model was slowly pivoted into a hybrid model where again we are supplying the spawn and the technical inputs, but rather than the farmer grow it at his location, we are going to have a centralized location where all these farmers are now going to be employed. Yes.
Right.
So
So
that's what
presently the cultivation is happening somewhere close to Bangalore, where you're located, or
So right now, all our cultivation is in-house, but this model is underway. Like it's almost at the, final stages, and we worked around that because while NuvoKisan was our initial idea and we started kind of putting these out, like Jashid said, now we've worked around it to kind of scale it in a way where that control part or that quality control part is something where we focused mostly on. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
I think, yeah, I mean, QC, quality control, quality check, especially for the extracts, as Jashid rightly mentioned, that has to be kept in check. And the more control you have on the entire cultivation process, the better the quality of the end product is going to be.
But Roshan, having said that, I mean, while we're working with functional mushrooms and quality becomes a very big part of it, if someone were to do it with just say oyster variety
Or shiitake.
or a shiitake, right? Just want to put that out there that this model is very, very doable. Where it's when you're just doing oysters or you're just doing like produce that could be put into the market for consumption, like to send to kitchens or to send to that this model works wonderfully, and there have been people who continue doing oysters.
Like I want to give a shout out to Dr. Sosang Longkumar from Nagaland, right?
Okay.
He basically started this model there, and it was one of the inspirations for us to take this up also. What he introduced was a very low tech, minimal technical intervention method of growing shiitake on oak logs. So these are logs that people found in their backyards or in their land, which they inoculated or they sort of put the mushroom mycelium into. And you can grow them like you grow your regular crops, right? Under a shade net, just spraying water, and every 2-3 months you get a crop. So for an edible mushroom which has a local market which can be aggregated and sold locally, this model works great. But when it comes to a technical product which needs certain specification, it might not be the best. So this is sort of our learning in this process.
Yeah. As when it is for consumption, the water content, all of that might not matter much. But when it comes to getting the extracts out, you would have certain specifications that you have to meet. The parameters that you have to meet, and that is where the quality check becomes so important, that you have the controllability of the entire cultivation process itself. But just to add to that, presently, what is the kind of quantity that you're dealing with on a monthly basis? Is there a specific quantity that you source presently?
See, with this new plant that we are working with, the idea is to be able to produce 2 tons of dried Ganoderma or reishi mushrooms per month. It will be one of India's biggest mushroom farms.
Wow. That's a revelation. I think you would be the first in India to have that kind of size and scale.
Yeah, among the first for this particular mushroom, we're starting
category of mushrooms.
This reishi mushroom or Ganoderma mushroom. It's one of the few farms in India which is able to produce this volume, and we are doing this majorly for the export market.
Awesome. So, I think I need to make a confession. There are certain names of mushrooms which I have never, kind of heard before. And the very mushroom that you just mentioned, shiitake, I had to go on to Google and hear the pronunciation, how it is pronounced, right? Just to get that thing right. But it is really fascinating for me to learn, because when we hear about mushrooms, I have only heard button mushrooms so far. All this exquisite mushrooms that is today available out there in the market. I think Indian market is still very new to this different varieties and options that are today available. I mean, keeping the extracts aside, but just even for the consumer, as a consumable, there are so many options today available. But to add to that, the other category or other area of applications for mushroom is to bring in circularity into the entire ecosystem, right? because they are known as decomposers in the entire value chain that we today know of. So we will segue to the second topic for this podcast, which is cultivating circularity, where mushrooms turning waste into wealth. So here, when we talk about agri waste, we also had a podcast recorded previously where we spoke about the agri waste problem, the challenges with air pollution as a result of stubble burning and all of that. So India today generates approximately around 700 millions of million tons of agri waste annually, and roughly around 92 million tons of waste is buried every year. We I mean, when we near October, November, December, Delhi has this AQI problem that we largely hear of. So walk us through the actual process on how does a kilogram of, let's say, rice straw or coffee pulp become a substrate to produce premium mushrooms.
Great question. Before I answer this question, I just want to touch upon one thing that you were talking about. See, India is our country is so diverse that it becomes very difficult to come up with any blanket statement. And when we say that we don't have a history of consuming exotic mushrooms, you would be surprised to know that according to some of the research papers which were done in, let's say, more regions of India with more green cover, which are not so urban, we have a history of consuming more than 100 different mushrooms for medicinal purposes.
For medicinal purposes, okay.
Just for medicinal purposes, there's a documented use of more than 100 different species, mostly among the tribal communities in India who live close to nature, right?
Wow.
So I just wanted to touch upon that to say that there's a part of our country which is extremely mycophilic, which loves mushrooms, and there's another side which has never been exposed to it, So this is also a dynamic in the market which makes it a very challenging country to sort of market this produce, because there's no one size fits all approach.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. Now coming to the cultivation side of things. So before I get into this, I just want to give a caveat that there are many ways to grow mushrooms, right? That also is what makes it very interesting, that based on your constraints, where you are and what's available to you, you can grow mushrooms in different ways. From the easiest of easy ways of boiling to the most complicated ways of having like super automated robotic farms where there's nobody inside, where you have 10 tons of mushrooms coming out every hour.
Yeah.
Both ends of the spectrum are possible depending on where you are and what your need is, right?
Right.
So now I'm going to look at the question, basically, how does a kilogram of coffee husk or ragi straw or paddy straw, how does that become a kilogram of fresh mushrooms, right?
Right.
So first question is, why ragi straw? Why coffee husk?
Coffee pulp.
So these are all wastes which have lignin, cellulose, and hemicellulose, right? So plant matter generally contains these three things, and this is what gives it its structural strength. Trees are able to grow straight up, and the wood is sort of hard and has that sort of structural integrity because of these three compounds, right? These three things. And for the longest time in nature, nothing could break it down. Right? No organism was able to break down this. And that's also the reason why we have a lot of fossil fuels. Because a lot of these plant matter which could not be broken down got buried under the earth under high pressure and turned into fossil fuels.
Right.
Somewhere along this path, fungi evolved the ability to break this down. Before this, they were breaking down rocks, right? So fungi are one of the few things which can actually break down lignocellulosic waste, right?
Okay.
To start there. Now, so basically in this process, what you're trying to do is to feed the fungus. Unlike a plant which can use sunlight and carbon dioxide to produce food, fungi are like us. They need external sources of nutrition. They need food to be given to them to sort of sustain. So how do they do this? They break down these lignocellulosic waste. Yeah, they take this lignin, cellulose, hemicellulose. They secrete with various digestive enzymes and they break it down and they absorb the nutrients. It's opposite of what happens inside us, where we put the food into our body, it breaks down inside our body, and then the nutrients are absorbed. In fungi, the fungi grows on the material and breaks it down as it's growing. So it's breaking down the material outside of its body and absorbing the nutrients, right? So you're actually trying to grow the fungus, and the mushroom is a fruit of the fungus. It's like when you're trying to grow mangoes, You're not growing mangoes, you're growing the mango tree.
Tree.
Correct?
Yeah.
So now that we have this analogy, let's start with the straw, right? You have a kilogram of straw. Now you want to feed it to a fungus. The first thing that you do is you prepare it. Preparation could be soaking it in water, making it wet. So there's some water also, and there's some moisture inside the substrate. The second step would be to clean it, right? You have to sterilize it, you have to clean it in some fashion so that whatever existing microorganism is on it, it's dead, and the fungus that you want to grow has a better chance,
Of surviving.
right? Of surviving. Then once you hydrate and you clean the material, you introduce the fungus into it, right? You introduce the fungus in the form of spawn or in the form of liquid culture, which is basically just the mycelium. The mycelium is the tree here, the vegetative part of the fungus. So you took the straw, you cleaned it, you hydrated it. Now you introduced the mycelium into it. And over the period of 3 weeks, this mycelium just keeps eating, right? 3 to 4 weeks is just eating and breaking down this straw. And once it's completely broken down, we take that same straw and we move it to a room where we simulate rain and fruiting conditions. Right? It's like creating summer for the mango tree because mangoes grow in summer.
In the summers.
The same way mushrooms grow in monsoon when there's high humidity, slightly low temperatures, and more oxygen, right? So we shift these bags or shift this mycelium with the substrate into a room where we initiate these conditions, and under these conditions, the mushrooms start to grow.
Right.
That is
this is very interesting also to understand how the entire absorption of the nutrition happens, which is in contrast to how we as human beings survive, right? It's quite opposite on that. But to get to the point once again, if you have 1 kg of, let's say, rice straw or something, how many kgs of mushroom can be produced as a result? Is there a figure, a rough ratio or something like that?
Right. So the technical term here is called biological efficiency, right? The definition is how many kilograms of fresh mushrooms can the fungus make from 1 kilogram of dry substrate? It's the efficiency of the fungus to transform 1 kilogram of dried matter into fresh mushrooms, right?
Right.
Now is where it gets a little tricky. This number of biological efficiency can change inside the same mushroom, right? So let's say we're talking about gray oyster, right? So gray oyster is a species, and inside the species you have multiple strains. Parallel would be you have mango, which is Mangifera indica. Then you have Alfonso, you have Banganpalli, you have Badami, and you have Mallika, and you have 100 others, right?
Varieties.
100 other varieties.
Yeah.
So for each variety, the yield, the time to maturity, the taste, the kind of soil it needs, how hot. There are late season mangoes, early season mangoes. So similarly, all mangoes. Same way in oysters, within the same species, you can have preferences for the material. Some might like paddy straw more, some might like sawdust more. So I can't really give you a correct number, but on an average, for an oyster, oysters have around 90 to 100% biological efficiency, which means that across
1 kg
3 to
equal
4
1 kg.
harvests, across 4 harvests, 1 kg of straw can produce 1 kg of grey oyster.
Assuming straw being the, like the keyword.
And if you move from straw to sawdust, it might become 50%.
It would differ there.
Yes.
Do you have a database or some form of a reading material? If somebody were very interested to learn which kind of mushrooms grows on which kind of substrate, what is the kind of environment, and what is the kind of yield that they can expect from the very thing? Is it available readily, or is there a research that is ongoing presently?
See, most of this data is in the form of research papers, and they are more suggestive than conclusive, right? Because I said substrate and strain, but growing conditions, how much humidity are you giving it, right? So there are many parameters which can change this number. But having said that, we have some resources.
And you will get a sense, like you'll get maybe not the exact number, but you get a sense.
Somewhere in the ballpark.
Right. But we also have a blog where we have made a resource which shows the species of mushroom, what they like to eat, and basically what climate conditions it can be grown on, right? So there is a resource that we have. It's a detailed blog that we've made for this
I think maybe post this podcast, we can put it as a link for somebody to click and maybe visit the website and read that blog there. But really fascinating to learn these things, how the substrate, how the the variety and the entire environment also influences the yield. And 1:1 ratio it is. But how long does it take for the mushroom, like say 1 kg of rice straw to convert into 1 kg of oyster mushroom? How many weeks does it take on an
Great question.
average?
So the bag to get ready, I said no. First you prepare the substrate, then you add the mycelium, and then it eats the mycelium. That eating phase is called incubation. And at that time, you don't do anything. We just let it rest. That can take anywhere between 3 to 4 weeks,
3 to 4 weeks.
3 to 4 weeks for the bag to get ready after you have
Right.
added the spawn inside. Then from that, every 2 weeks, you get a harvest, and across 6 weeks, right? So across 6 weeks, you'll get 3 harvests, which is 1 kilo. So start to finish, it's somewhere around 10 weeks, you can say. 8 to 10 weeks
8 to
for
10
one
weeks.
full cycle.
Roughly 2 months time to kind of for the entire cycle to kind of finish off.
Yeah, you
The
could
the
say.
the, the reason I asked this question is because there is this problem point that is now being discussed in multiple forums about kitchen waste or any sort of waste. How long does it take for it to kind of convert into wealth? Right. The entire objective here is to crunch that time so that the faster sort of either, even if it is composting or converting into what we call as black gold, through earthworms and things like that. The entire objective is to crunch this thing. So that is exactly why I asked this question, so that if we can get a sense of mushrooms, if it were considered as an option to convert waste into wealth, it would take on an average 2 months of time.
Right.
Right.
And I feel like mushroom is a great intermediary stage, right? Whatever's, again, this comes back to the question of circularity. Whatever's left after growing mushrooms, you've basically broken down all the really hard things to break down, right? It's like a pre-prep for composting. If I use the straw or all this brown matter inside compost, it won't break down. It'll take way longer because the bacteria and the microbes inside that are not capable of it. It's one of those hard to break down things.
You can think of mycelium like a pre-probiotic, like, for
Yeah.
things. It's an early, like it helps kind of aid that
Makes
process
the
and
entire system better and prepped.
Better
There is one other thing called as a black soldier fly. I'm not sure if you
Right.
have heard about
BSF larvae.
Yes.
Yeah, BSF larvae. So this is also one such nature-based solution that is now being thought of as a faster way of turning waste into something that is much more valuable.
Yes.
But I do believe that mushrooms, which are natural decomposers, it definitely has an application there. My next question to you is around carbon footprint. So from a carbon footprint perspective, how much from a carbon footprint perspective, how much greenhouse gas emissions does mushroom cultivation prevent compared to traditional waste burning? And have you initiated an exercise to measure your sustainability performance so far?
Right. So maybe I could talk a little bit about, before coming to carbon footprint, I think I could talk a little bit about like, say the mushrooms that we are growing, and like maybe compare that with something that is, say a traditional plant. So when we look at the ESG, or we're looking at, all of those standards, how do we kind of measure that? So if you think of lion's mane mushroom, right? So lion's mane mushroom is a mushroom that we grow, and it is used mostly for its functional benefits. Maybe if you compare that with something like a Brahmi, Brahmi again has a similar benefit that a lion's mane offers in terms of its,
it's the same function and two different ingredients, you can say.
Yes.
Okay.
So when we think of like, growing it as per, say if you're growing Brahmi from say a land cultivation point of view, or where we're growing it in terms of being completely field grown, right? So you take 1 hectare of lion's mane, that would be 900% more in terms of biomass. And it would be, say, about 90% to 95% less in terms of water utility. And if you think of it in terms of, say, carbon emissions, say, per kg of growing it, it's about 60% less. So overall, like, and because you have to compare it with something that is, say, in the plant kingdom is also parallelly used in the same way, and the final usage of it is sort of exactly the same. That's when you can actually see how it works from a not just from a growing perspective, but also from a final utility perspective.
Yeah, an orange to orange comparison.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And also coming to your question of head-to-head
Head
comparison
comparison.
of using the straw, if you use the straw to grow mushrooms versus burning it, that was the question. So there I would say that the mushroom, on an average, from whatever we know, it produces anything between, like I said, depending on how you grow the mushroom, right?
Right.
It could be completely tech integrated or super low tech, right?
Correct.
It can be anything between 50 to 90% less carbon emissions than burning.
Yeah, that is for sure. If we benchmark with the present or traditional way of disposing of waste, which is through stubble burning,
Right.
in comparison with the mushrooms as an alternate there, we should definitely have a lesser carbon footprint, given that there is no emissions put into the air.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
But as you rightly said, depending on the kind of tech, depending on the kind of processes that that one wishes to implement, perhaps the carbon emissions will also vary. But given that you have a specific system to develop or cultivate your mushrooms, has there been a study done on the carbon saving that could happen through your process?
So we haven't taken up any direct study
Yet. Okay.
from ours. Yeah, we haven't taken it up yet, but we would want to.
Yeah.
But from our side, we measure things like how much agri waste we have utilized to grow mushrooms rather than it being burned, right? How much water we saved, how much electricity we've saved. Because not just the cultivation, it's the extraction and the processing also, we have tried to use as many green technologies as possible.
Yes, I think even in terms of our processing part, which is the main part, like of course the growing is there, but the processing where one would assume we would use more energy. We've tried to pick green technologies, like for example, the extracts that we make are ultrasound assisted extraction technology.
Okay.
Here it's a lot more, first of all, time to make it is much lesser. So you're not utilizing that machine for so long.
Yeah.
Secondly, it uses a lot less, it's more energy efficient.
Energy efficient.
It processes. And I think even in terms of the
solvent
solvent
usage is much lesser.
Yes.
Just to give you a head-to-head comparison, when we use the ultrasound process, I can't get into the nitty-gritties of it because it's what do you say? The
Patent
process is the patent.
Yeah.
But just assume that an extraction for us takes less than 1 hour, whereas a traditional extract can be anything between 8 to 16 hours.
Oh, wow.
Right? And our extraction for certain mushrooms happens at room temperature. Whereas there it happens between 60 to 80 degrees.
Oh, there is a need for a atmosphere management as well.
Constant heating. So we would want to measure the impact. So right now it's extremely rudimentary. We also put in a lot of effort to source the raw materials as close to our facility as possible. Right? It's
So the
not
transportation also.
Exactly.
Yeah, we want to reduce the miles basically, right? Support the local farmers, ensure that we use as many locally available materials. We use a lot of unconventional substrates, for example, ragi straw, right? A lot of the mushrooms that we grow, typically grown on hardwood sawdust, there's a component of ragi straw in it because we find it very easily locally. And also trying to introduce invasive species of wood. For example, silver oak and acacia, which have been introduced in and around Bangalore for commercial purposes, where they wiped out the local sort of species. We try to incorporate a lot of that into our growing so that we can have some use for it. Right? So there are things that we are doing, but 100% is not something that we've measured, but we would like to. Yeah, absolutely, we would like to.
It is I'm happy to learn that you have taken so much care and taken note of those little details, little aspects, so that when you come up with the final process, which is patent pending, which will be as green as possible, given that it takes 1/16 the time as compared to the traditional process, that itself will save a lot of energy. And given that it can be done in the room temperature, there is no necessity for maintaining the air temperature either. And plus, adding to that, when you talk about sourcing it locally, would also save on the transportation, but all of that. So clearly, the carbon footprint will be significantly less if a study were made. I think it will be significantly less as compared to the traditional way of doing it. And again, the reason I asked the question is just to bring some highlight into measuring of the sustainability performance today. And clearly it would have, I think, as a consultant, I could also say that it clearly would have that sort of grading to that. But when you mention that carbon emission is not the only thing that has to be measured. I agree on that point, because when you say that you're measuring the water intake, you're measuring the kind of substrate that you're doing, that is also a part of the sustainability performance measurement. So that's really great. Let's move on to the next question, which is slightly on the government side. So the government of India's program, which is known by the name Gobardhan scheme, aims to convert organic wealth waste to wealth, and states like Odisha have launched dedicated mushroom missions targeting women farmers. So how does Nuvedo's model align with these policy initiatives, and where do you see partnership opportunities within this Govardhan scheme?
Right, great
Do
question.
you see it in Karnataka presently? Is it happening here?
We are not aware, at least we have not seen it happening locally. And it's a
Okay.
great question because it addresses the issue that we had earlier,
Yeah,
right?
when we started.
When we started the farmer model, NuvoKisan, the biggest issue we had was this. When you come as a corporate or a private organization into a farming community, there's always this apprehension and there's this doubt about the intention of the company, because many times it has happened that they've been exploited, right? Right. And that apprehension is, how do I say,
Valid.
it's valid and it's justified because they have had a lot of bad experiences. Be
Right.
it when, what do you say, they were shifted from organic farming into using chemical inputs, which sort of further trapped them into debt, right? These are all things that have happened which show that it's very difficult to trust an outsider. So I feel like the first and foremost would be when the government intervenes and acts as a liaison between you and a local community, in which they are the bridge, and there is that level of trust. I feel it
Much more
becomes
safer.
much safer, much easier for us to manage,
Very true.
right? That level of trust is much easier, and they already have an existing system that we can sort of plug into.
Correct. So, I mean, presently in Karnataka, you have not heard of this scheme being utilized or being implemented?
Currently, we're not aware
Aware of
what,
that.
yeah, we are not
Okay.
sure that maybe it's already in motion, but not aware right now.
Yeah, I mean, if I think people who are in the business are not aware, I think not enough communication has been done from the government either, right? Because
Possibly,
I mean, even when we open this government portals, there are so many schemes that is put out there.
Yeah.
Hardly do we know anything about them, right?
Yeah,
And only when we enter into discussions with people like yourselves, would we come to figure out, understand what are the kind of opportunities, if there is subsidy available,
Yes.
options available, are there loans available? All these things are unknown to the general public there. But I'm glad that this, I mean, I'm hoping that this particular question will lead to more conversations around this Govardhan scheme, if it is available, and if it is available in Karnataka.
I just wanted to add one thing that, when you think of like the schemes, yeah, a lot of these schemes exist, and I think it is, has value in particular places. But I think these schemes also have to go beyond just a subsidy, I think to think of it, for example, with mushroom cultivation especially, there's a lot of buzzword. People will set up farms. In the last 4 years, we've seen so many people come to us. They set up farms. They they know how to cultivate all of that. But I think the awareness of what to do next, like, okay, do I have a market ready? Can I process it in a certain way? Can I dehydrate them? Can I can them? Can I figure out different ways to sort of use these produce? Because farms come, farms go. We've seen across in the last 4 years, so many farms have come and gone where people have really put in all of their energies and all utilizing these schemes. But I think it's also important to build like a larger network where people are also more connected. And we faced that maybe in the beginning where when we were setting up, we realized that lot of different farms are setting up, they're growing, they have all this produce, and they're saying, what do I do with it? Even as early as yesterday or day before, I got a message saying, hey, I have this much produce of cordyceps. Do you have any use for it? Now, again, this comes back to the question of, where is the market at and how are we kind of growing it organically with government schemes? So our government schemes only incentivizing them to grow Or are they also incentivizing them to say, okay, look, we can connect you with these two people and
Yeah.
make that marriage happen? So I think we have to look beyond like subsidies and look at it more as like a larger network.
Yeah,
So
but
think
building
like,
of the entire ecosystem is
yeah,
definitely necessary, and I think players like yourself play a very integral part in that entire ecosystem with trainings and this level of knowledge that you've now gathered. And I think yeah, like you rightly mentioned, the governments or the schemes has to go beyond just subsidizing things,
Correct.
building an entire knowledge base, access to market, having some form of a MSP for this kind of produce, all of that. Yeah,
Correct.
I think
And
it's yeah.
that brings us to this point where we feel like there's enough from the supply side,
Hmm.
but nothing has been done on the demand side. I think the best case to look at here is the poultry revolution that happened in the 90s, right? When we were growing up.
Yeah, anda.
The Sunday Hoya Monday Rose Cow Ande program was actually to support the
Yeah,
poultry farmers, because in India, we're a country where we used to eat eggs once a week or maybe when guests come home,
correct,
right? How do you change that behavior? You need a top-down approach,
correct.
right? And they've capitalized on health, saying that please eat egg for vitamin D and B vitamins
whatever.
and other things, right? So imagine like a nationwide campaign on mushrooms, right? Just telling people how good mushrooms are. Or
Yeah,
even something as simple as not highlighting the mushroom, but maybe mixing it into
Midday meal.
midday meal sabji, like in an Anganwadi, giving this to improve the health of the children who are coming there, where there's
correct.
a direct buyback from the farmer, where he doesn't have to struggle and he can focus on what he does best, which is growing, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So there is clear lack of support on the demand side, if you ask me, and we see that time and again.
yeah, yeah.
Till the time there's no use for these mushrooms, even from an ingredient perspective. Let's look beyond it as a
Sabji.
sabji, right? Mushroom as a key product. Let's
Product.
look beyond that and let's think like China. China has mushrooms as one of the top five agricultural produce. They eat 25 kgs per person per year of mushrooms compared to less than 100 grams in India, because
Wow.
every single dish in China has a mushroom in it.
Hmm.
It's just one of those things that you add to any dish. It doesn't need to be the limelight,
Wow.
right?
25, 25 kg versus 100 grams in India. But
Yeah,
Jashid, do you think this has happened over the years? Because when you mentioned, I mean, when we earlier had this question, you mentioned that India had a use of 100 plus mushrooms in the medicinal part and largely in the tribal community. But over time, the consumption of mushrooms has in India has dropped. Do you think somewhere the agricultural revolution that happened in India is responsible for this as well, or are there any other reasons that could have kind of made this mushrooms kind of take the back seat?
great question.
Yeah, I think it's two things. So it's not, I would say, while, we were using mushrooms in like niches and in pockets. So say there were tribal communities across India who were foraging them or had uses
Hmm.
of them. Cultivation began little later. So when cultivation came, it came in like phases with different species or different varieties. For example, button mushrooms came in, then milky mushrooms came in, then paddy straw. So these are different varieties, two of which are, I mean, button mushroom is not a native variety, but like paddy
Paddy
straw
straw.
and
Mm.
milky is. So those came in pockets.
Hmm.
But again, I wouldn't say it would be fair to say that it's one agricultural revolution that took over. It's not that we were also using it so extensively across India,
Yeah,
because that's a diversity issue also. It's not like,
perhaps.
okay, maybe in like pockets of Northeast, Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, Kerala, things like that, it was being used very much, and then
Hmm.
it sort of disappeared. And that could be maybe because of the agricultural revolution. But in some pockets, it was not even used.
Hmm.
It was not there only. So it's hard to make that larger statement on it. But I would say that even the cultivation part, it's when things get more mainstream, it's also when it's being produced at like in a larger way. It's not just
Right,
being foraged by small communities and all of that,
It's
but
no
right.
longer seasonal, it's
it's
available every day.
yeah. So I
Hmm.
think that was it happened. I wouldn't say it declined. I would say button mushrooms and other varieties that were able to be cultivated took the limelight. So
Yeah.
those were there. And then medicinal mushrooms were grown in pockets and they kind of
Mostly wild forest and
wild forest.
seasonally harvested.
seasonally
Right.
up.
But within India, Northeast has the largest consumption presently when it comes to
So you can say Orissa, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and what do you say, Meghalaya, Assam, all this entire belt has a much higher per capita
consumption of.
mushroom consumption.
Oh wow,
Yes.
okay, really fascinating because I come from Bangalore, and
Right.
we have a mushroom dish that happens when there is a first thunderstorm.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
When the first lightning happens, then for a couple of days, somebody would go foraging. They would pick up the mushrooms, and we would have that. But that's the only time in the year we would do. I mean, now we get button mushrooms,
Yeah.
in the shops readily. But
Yeah.
back then, when I was young, it was perhaps the only time we would have mushrooms, and it was a delicacy.
Yeah.
Correct.
Alambi, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jashid, Prithvi, let's move to the next topic, which is functional fungi as India's nutritional revolution, right? I think we touched upon this topic in bits and pieces in the entire conversation where we spoke about the use of mushrooms not just as for consumption, but also for enhancing sleep, enhancing focus, enhancing overall health, mental health, and the emotional aspects along that part. So my first question is this: the shiitake is currently the largest revenue generating segment, as based on my research, while reishi shows the fastest growth. So can you explain the specific bioactive compounds in your mushroom varieties and how this translate into health benefits for Indian consumers?
Right. Great question. So mushrooms in general, you can say, have a bunch of common, what do you say, bioactives, right? The most common bioactive in mushroom is what is called beta glucan, right?
Mhm.
And it's dietary fiber basically, right? It's a soluble dietary fiber found inside mushrooms. It's similar to what we find inside yeast and oats. Oats also have
Okay.
beta glucans, but what makes us different is in in mushrooms, the degree of branching of the structure is slightly different, which means it has a different effect in our body, right?
Hmm.
So starting with beta glucans. Beta glucans basically do a bunch of things, but if you want to look at the top three things that it does, it works in a system to modulate your immunity, right? What does immune modulation mean? It means that if you're fighting an infection, it can boost your immune system to fight it. But if you're suffering from an autoimmune condition like an allergy where your body is fighting itself, it can calm it. So
Okay.
traditionally, when you have an allergy, you take an immunosuppressant, right?
Hmm.
Like a steroid,
Correct.
steroid or antihistamine. When you take a steroid, you're actually suppressing the entire immune system, which makes you prone to falling sick,
Sick.
right? Here, it doesn't do that. You can do both at the same time. Mushrooms are very unique that way, right?
Hmm.
And before going into anything, the question is, okay, we have so many medicinal plants. Why now mushrooms, right? What's the big deal? There is where we have to think about how closely we are related and why do mushrooms have these compounds in the first place,
Hmm.
right? So mushrooms and human beings or animals, we share more than 50% of our DNA. Mushrooms are more closely related to us than they are to trees,
Right.
right? So whatever they're sort of producing for themselves in nature, so they are also affected by different bacteria, different viruses, different other fungi. And turns out that these same compounds, when we use it, we have similar effects in our body,
Hmm.
right? So that's the reason why fungi-based bioactive compounds or fungi-based medicines or extracts work better on us. Best example is antibiotics, right? Antibiotics come from fungi.
Hmm.
They're extracted from a fungus. So the same way, they have a whole range of compounds which work on us. And the most common or most popular one is beta glucans. And beta glucans are there across all mushrooms. All mushrooms contain this. So
Right.
by eating a mushroom or having a mushroom extract or a soup, you're stimulating your immune system. You're balancing it. Some mushrooms are more balancing than others. So if you compare the two mushrooms that you spoke about, if you look at shiitake and
Reishi.
Rishi.
reishi, reishi is more modulating, shiitake is more stimulating. So if you're falling sick, if you want something to fight an infection, you would rather take a shiitake. But if you have an allergic reaction, you want to take a reishi, where it sort of soothes the immune system, right? That's the first thing. And the same dietary fiber, if you look at fiber as a nutrient, low fiber leads to a bunch of lifestyle disorders, right? And there's enough evidence to show that if you look at cultures or regions of the world where there's a high fiber diet and regions which are more developed where there's lesser fiber,
Yeah.
there's higher instances of diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Both of these are directly correlated with how much fiber is in your diet, right?
Right.
So these same beta glucans, when you consume, it can also sort of regulate your blood sugar levels, and it helps you it reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease.
Right.
So this is all from the dietary fiber.
Right.
Now, apart from the dietary fiber, mushrooms contain strong, very large amounts of antioxidants, right? The antioxidants we consume today because we have a lot of oxidative stress. We are exposing our bodies to different chemicals, all kinds of radiation, which is not there before, which is making our bodies get damaged and age faster, right? So these antioxidants sort of act as a barrier and protect us against all of these compounds. So that's the second class of compounds, antioxidants. Third are mushroom-specific bioactives. So antioxidants and this dietary fiber is there across all mushrooms. Now there are mushroom-specific compounds. If you look at reishi, reishi contains terpenoids. Terpenoids are fat-soluble compounds which have the ability to cross into your blood-brain barrier. And what makes reishi terpenes unique is that it can improve your sleep quality. It can reduce stress and it can improve sleep quality. Now, if you go to another mushroom, lion's mane, the terpenes inside lion's mane can literally help you regrow new nerve cells,
Okay.
right? So for Alzheimer's, dementia, or other neurodegenerative conditions where your nerve cells are being damaged or neural pathways are being damaged, this can help you insulate your nerves, grow new nerve cells, literally grow new nerve cells, improve your focus, improve your cognitive performance. And all of what I'm saying has been proven by clinical trials, right?
Oh, wow.
This is not something that's just preliminary research. There's
Right.
proof for this.
But Jashid, when you mention this, health benefits, are they supposed to be consumed orally, or are you is there an injection? How does it work?
Great question. So for the beta glucans, for this dietary fiber, eating the mushroom, you can get it, right? It is a water-soluble compound. So if you make a broth out of it or you add half a cup of water while sauteing the mushroom, you're getting a lot of those. But these terpenes or other compounds which are fat-soluble, it needs to be extracted, right?
Right.
You need to do an extraction process. Even the water-soluble compounds, if you want to get the most out of the mushroom, it has to be extracted because all these compounds are trapped inside the cell wall of the mushroom.
Right.
And fun fact, the cell wall is made of chitin. And chitin is what insect shells are made of. Your crab shells, prawns, insect shells, arthropod shells, they're all made of chitin. And both you and I know that you can't break that down. Our body
Yeah.
is not able to break it down, right?
Right.
It's an indigestible carbohydrate.
And
So
this is some of the facts when it comes to, consumption of these mushrooms, where people traditionally, for example, we knew how to process them. We knew that they were supposed to be made into broths. For example, think of traditional Chinese medicine. They make these broths that take hours to be made, and they use some of these functional fungi. But of course, as that kind of information isn't being passed on, or you don't have access to it, sometimes mushrooms are consumed the wrong way, and they don't have the desired effect, and secondly, they're not really good for your body. In fact, if you consume them in not the right manner, it actually does more harm than good. So
Good.
even the way we actually understand some of these mushrooms doesn't stop at just growing them and eating them, but like, how do we process it? Which also ties back to the themes that we were talking about with governments and with farmers, where they grow all these mushrooms, and what do you do with it? Or like,
Right.
how do you kind of take it to the next step, and how do we kind of create that full system, not just in terms of growing circularity, but consuming and all of the rest that comes with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Everything attached with it.
Yeah,
But
so yeah,
I mean, as a let's say for an Indian consumer who is
yeah,
looking for a very balanced diet,
yeah,
if you were to make a suggestion on
yeah.
his how a plate of food should look like,
Mhm.
what amount of mushrooms would you recommend on a given plate?
see, I think having one serving of mushrooms, which is like 100
Yeah.
grams in a day, or maybe a couple of times a week is actually very good.
Yeah, so like I would say every 2 days would be like if you had to, it had to be sustainable and like doable. Twice a week, 100 grams is something that could do wonders. I mean,
Right.
we've seen it ourselves, like in the last 4 years, 5 years of just eating our own mushrooms, even if it's just growing and we just kind of have, it changes a lot. I mean, and I think we're not just saying it because it's like, okay, we are growing mushrooms. We say, okay, please eat more. No, it's not even just that. Just in terms of fiber, I think dietary fiber and sort of settling many things in the gut, it helps. It helps a lot. Like I think that's something we've seen.
Right. And want to clear a misconception here actually. People think that they can depend just on mushrooms for their protein
No.
intake, but it's not true.
Not true.
Right? Because they say that, oh, mushrooms contain as much protein as a chicken. But if you read that statement and refer the research paper, there's an asterisk which says on a dry weight basis. And let me break that down for you. Right?
Yeah.
Mushrooms are 90% water.
Correct.
Right? So if you have 100 grams of mushrooms, 90 grams of that is water. What is left is the 10. In that 10, there's 3 grams of protein, right? So on a fresh weight basis, you're getting 3 grams of protein for that 100 gram
100 grams
packet.
of, 3% of protein only.
That's it. But on a dry weight basis, that becomes 30%.
Correct.
So if you want to hit, let's say, amount of protein that an egg gives you, which is like 6 grams, you have to eat 200 grams of mushroom or one egg. An egg is way more practical and much cheaper, right?
That
It's
is
like
true.
10 rupees.
That is
5 to 10 rupees for a good egg.
So
Mushroom
so
would be-
eating mushrooms just for the protein intake is not a feasible idea.
Not correct, because it's more about the fiber content that we're
Right.
looking at and also the quality of protein. So
Correct.
you're getting a lot of other,
Amino acids.
amino acids and other things associated with. So adding it more as a, adding it into the diet for sure, but thinking of it not from just, okay, a protein point of view, but looking at it as a more high quality protein source is what we have to look at. And fiber, yeah, like he explained, is undeniably important for us, and that doesn't really happen with, say, an egg or
Yeah, and right now we're in the protein revolution where there's a lot of scaremongering saying that Indian diets are, so we are all protein deficient.
Yeah.
I'm sure in another 5 years there'll be a fiber revolution where everybody wakes up and they're like, oh, we are not having enough fiber.
Enough fiber.
Yeah, and too much protein is happening and not enough fiber,
Yeah.
So I feel like
it's that balance where we have to strike, where we say, okay, yes, we're looking at protein, yes, cover the macros, cover all of that, but look at fiber as well, because that's being seen as a larger issue than just
and not just that. In general, mushrooms they keep you full longer,
That's
right? So if you're trying to reduce your food intake, if you want to have something which is low calorie, diabetic friendly, mushrooms are a great choice.
Absolutely.
Okay, that is an interesting one. I think for those who are fitness enthusiasts, maybe they would find value in that, because right now this low calorie diet is a fad. I'm not taking for or against it, but still, for somebody who's on a weight reduction journey, low calorie deficit diet is what they prefer. So mushrooms definitely can fit that requirement there. So to summarize, overall for an Indian who's looking to have a very balanced diet, adding mushrooms, maybe 100 grams of mushrooms twice a week.
Yeah.
But do not just take it for the protein part alone. It is perhaps for the other micronutrients plus the fibers that this particular kingdom provides as well. Right? If you were to make a recommendation today, Prithvi, Jashid, the kind of mushrooms that us Indians today can have access to, if you were to give me 3 names, what would those 3 names be?
Yeah.
Button mushrooms for sure.
For sure.
Because that's the easiest one you can get, right?
Right.
And
Oysters.
Oysters also becoming increasingly common in a lot of urban areas.
Mostly white and gray, which you see. Yeah.
That again is a very psychological thing, The second
White
you see
is
color
better.
in mushrooms, you think it's toxic.
Yeah. Anything that is not white is not meant to eat.
Correct. Yeah, that's also why these button mushrooms are white, and they're actually not white. It's just a particular variety which is what's made white, because I think people associate white with cleanliness or
racism penetrates every walk of life.
We are a country where the fastest moving cosmetic product is a whitening cream, so I'm not surprised that this is
that is true. That is true. That is a different discussion altogether. I mean, I have this discussions with many of my friends as well. But again, let's come back to the point of discussion here.
So
So
shiitake, I think
shiitake,
shiitake, oyster, and
button mushrooms,
button would be like the
three.
three.
You'll
Uh,
find the more.
and if you were to give me a price range of button mushrooms on a kg wise, which would be the
Right.
most expensive among the three? Shiitake?
Shiitake is going to be the most expensive. In bulk, it costs around 800 rupees per kg.
Hmm.
And oyster and button are around the same. It's around 200 to 300 rupees per kg, you
Per
can say,
kg.
depending on where you are.
Okay. So preferably, I think for somebody who's looking for an immediate source, I think button mushrooms and oyster mushrooms are a go-to,
Great.
and then
Yeah.
maybe a shiitake thing.
Yeah. Shiitake,
Let's now talk about a little more about the extracts that you today provide. Nuvedo, I see that you have multiple extracts that are today available. Can you throw some lights on the kind of extracts that you today have, which is ready to be utilized? Maybe what are the different varieties of extracts that you presently have, and what are the benefits each of these extracts have?
Right.
Right.
So we have 4 mushrooms that we work with currently.
Hmm.
The most popular one is lion's mane. So first thing is most of these mushrooms are either looked after where they like named after where they grow or how they look, right?
Right.
So lion's mane literally looks like a lion's mane. It has long, teeth, you want to call it. It's called teeth. So that mushroom is the most popular one that we have right now. Sells 2 times as much as the others.
Oh, wow.
And it's because it has the ability to improve your focus, mental clarity, right? So I feel like this after COVID, there's a lot of pressure on us to perform better at work, and there's so much overstimulation happening because of all the social media and that the inputs that we're getting on a day-to-day basis. That's possibly why it's more popular, but people consume it for that extra sharpness at work. And a lot of people are also buying it for their older parents because it has a neuroprotective effect. And now we are seeing that Alzheimer's, dementia, and all of these are becoming more and more common because we're growing older, right?
Right.
Our lifespans have increased. So people buying it for their aging parents and for themselves to sort of do better at cognitive
Does
tasks.
it work just like caffeine does, or?
Actually, it works way better than caffeine.
Okay.
Great question. So first thing is that there is no crash, right? What caffeine does is basically cutting the feedback mechanism, right?
Right.
You're actually tired or sleepy, and caffeine just cuts that and makes you feel like you're okay,
Yeah.
right? And what happens is the more you use caffeine, the more dependency you have, and there's also tolerance, right? You need 3 coffees after a month of having 1 coffee every day to have the same effect.
Right.
But lion's mane has the exact opposite effect. First of all, there's no crash, right? Because there's no stimulation. It's a very it feels very natural. It doesn't feel extra, so there's no anxiety, no jitters, and no crash because there's nothing that's sort of wearing off.
It just sort of clears, I would say, the additional clutter that is around, or this brain fog, like people kind of feel foggy in the mornings or don't have that clarity. And it
Right.
allows you to sort of sustain with that flow state. So a lot of our customers come back saying, it's not like coffee because it gives me a sort of hyper focus without sort of bodily stimulating me. So it has a very different effect, and it doesn't create any dependency like coffee does. Like once after 2 hours of having your coffee, you immediately crash.
Right.
This doesn't have that effect. It kind of works much longer periods of time, and it has that sort of extended flow state where you
So
would be
how are we supposed to consume it? Are we supposed to add it into our drink or directly consume it? And what quantity are we supposed to consume?
right.
So the extracts that we make are in liquid form. They can be consumed sublingually. You can put it directly inside your mouth, under your tongue, or in any beverage. We would suggest having it directly because the absorption is much faster. And we recommend a dosage of 2 ml per day. But see, that's another thing which is kind of controversial, that there is a dosage, but I feel like as you work with this, you have to find your own relationship with this.
What is the
How sensitive are
appropriate?
you?
Yeah.
Yeah, because some people drink half a cup of coffee and others need 2, right? And
Yeah.
there's also the compounding effect. So when
Correct.
you use this mushroom for a long duration of time, the effect on your cognitive performance, it increases with time, right? The research has shown that after 3 weeks of regular use, when you use it again, you actually feel the effects way more than you did when you take it the first time.
Right. So the presently the bottle that you make, how many ml is it?
It's 50 ml and it's 25 servings.
25 servings. So it would so once a day, 2 ml as a prescribed dosage is what you're supposed to be.
Right.
And
Or
how
whenever you
long?
need it.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Or whenever you need it.
Yeah,
Imagine
yeah.
you're having like a midday crash, right? After
Right.
lunch, you're feeling a little sleepy, and that's the time when you're least productive. Maybe you can take it at that time and it'll give you another 3-4 hours of good work time.
Right. So once you have one dose for the next 3-4 hours, you have that focused mode there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is one, lion's mace.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
What
second
are the
is
other three?
reishi, which is again a very popular mushroom. It's also known as the herb of immortality. It was used for thousands of years in traditional Chinese medicine. Reishi, also called Ganoderma lucidum. It has a property. Of course, it has a bunch of different properties. When you look at it from a bioactive point of view, but one of the biggest effects that we observe is its ability for restful sleep as well as stress relief. So it kind of helps your body relax. It helps you, to kind of fall asleep, and it helps a lot with immunomodulation, as Rashid mentioned earlier, in terms of if you're somebody with a very hyperactive immune system, so a lot of allergies, or somebody with a very low one, it kind of modulates it. It brings it back to what we call homeostasis. So reishi is again a very popular mushroom because, again, if you look at lifestyle and what we're kind of experiencing in today's day and age, focus is a big thing, and also the ability to not focus and kind of de-stimulate and
Yeah.
relax and sleep.
Relax a bit.
Yeah, so it helps a lot from that point of view. So reishi we've seen also as a big, it's a big mushroom that people seek, as well as also offer it as, relief to like their parents, or across age groups. So we've seen reishi as another one. And reishi also is a mushroom that, surprisingly, now one would think, okay, it would be helpful for me to fall asleep, or it would be helpful for me to take at the end of a day after a long day of work, all of that. But we've surprisingly also seen many people take it during the day, where they're able to kind of cut the edge off and just be a little more relaxed, say if they're having a very stressful day. So we've seen people, a lot of our customers come back and say, while I have taken it in the evenings, it also helps me midday. Where maybe you're a very, very, hyper person, or you're very, stimulated all the time, kind of cuts the edge off. So I actually wanted to talk a little bit about how we use adaptogens, how we use these products as well, where you're adapting to your own body's ability. You're not saying that this is a one size fits all, but it really adapts to the way your body functions, how you understand it, and you're able to kind of create that edge. So you're able to build better with your own biochemistry that
Right.
exists.
Right.
So
Right.
that's it.
But this prescription of consuming this extracts, do we do it on an empty stomach, or do we do it on a full stomach? Is there a
Right.
recommendation there?
Right. So we recommend taking it on an empty stomach because it's easier for your body to absorb.
Absorb it.
But with food is also okay, but recommended to take it without anything on by itself.
But food
Right.
is also completely fine. Yeah.
Right. So that makes two, reishi and lion's mace. There are
Right.
two more.
Third one is cordyceps. Cordyceps again is a really popular mushroom. Became popular because of the TV show Last of Us, right? It's called the zombie fungus.
Yeah.
In the show, it's shown to take over human beings and turn them into zombies. But actually, it doesn't do that. It does that to insects, and it's evolved over a millions of years to have that specific host that it can infect, right? In nature, you find it growing on insects. So what it does is it's like a natural pre-workout. It improves your energy levels, right? It's basically making your tuning your metabolism, working on your metabolic health, making your metabolism faster, but it's also improving your cardiovascular fitness by expanding your lungs. It improves your RBC volume. It sort of makes your RBC swell up so it can absorb more oxygen, and also expands your blood vessels and lungs. So you're breathing in more oxygen, your RBC is taking in more oxygen, your energy systems are more tuned. All of this translates to better endurance through the day. Even if you're not an athlete, if you just want something that keeps you going and improves that vitality, that internal energy, cordyceps is great. And cordyceps also a lot of people use for hormone regulation. Like it's one of those mushrooms that people use for balancing their hormones. So for women who suffer from PCOD, PCOS, they have found a lot of relief by using cordyceps. It also helps them fight that fatigue.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a very popular mushroom.
Okay, so that makes three. One more.
Three.
Last is shiitake. I think shiitake, as we mentioned, is also a culinary mushroom. When it's eaten, of course, there's fiber and umami, a lot of interesting flavors and profiles that come into it. But when you make it as an extract, it's really good for fighting off infections, and also really good for skin and hair. It has compounds like kojic acid, and helps a lot with, improving that ability for regeneration, like with skin and giving that shine to hair. So we've seen that kind of benefit with shiitake. It's also, we've seen few customers use it topically while we consume it, orally. We've
Orally.
seen that people have also used it topically and has had a bunch of different benefits. So
Right.
shiitake is more like, you can say, a maintenance sort of extract where having it at any time of the day helps to just keep a larger, overall immunity, overall fighting off infection. Or if you feel like you're coming with an onset of a cold, or you feel like things are, sort of starting an itchy throat, shiitake really helps to kind of cut that out. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, for four mushrooms that you highlighted, reishi, lion mace, cordyceps, and shiitake, all four having some beneficial elements to human health. So, which clearly now states that there are functional mushrooms that are today available, not just for consumption, but there is much more value can be extracted by consuming the extracts themselves, right? So we will touch upon the economic side. One question here. So Jashid, Prithvi, talking about India's growth story and moving towards the Vikasit Bharat thing. India's functional mushroom market is today projected to grow from 707.4 million back in 2023 to around 1,433.8 million USD by 2030, with a CAGR of around 10.6%. Now, given there is a clear opportunity here where there is growth story that is clearly being projected, given that functional mushroom powder alone is expected to reach around 107.7 million USD by 2032, where does Nuvedo position itself in this value chain?
Right. Great question again. And I feel like we want to sort of come in as the bridge where we allow different other end use cases for the mushroom, right? Because if the industry has to grow, fine, mushroom extracts are great, but how do you get more people to use it, right? It has to be by penetrating into the functional food and beverage space. And that space is slowly picking up, right? It's blowing up in the US, but in India, it's slowly coming where you're demanding extra from your food rather than just they're giving you your macros. You want it to give you other functional benefits also. And mushrooms sort of top the list when it comes to being a functional ingredient because a single ingredient can have multiple effects on your body, right? So what we want to do is position ourselves as an ingredient manufacturer with a specialization in custom formulations. So if you're a brand which wants to incorporate mushrooms into their product, we won't just sell you the extract, but we can customize it and give it to you in a way that the product itself is a revolutionary product, right?
Okay.
Sort of giving novel formulations using mushrooms for specific applications.
Right. So the presently the four extracts that you presently have, can they also be further tweaked to match the requirement of an individual?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've been working with a lot of different brands in the functional food and beverages space where our extracts are being integrated into their formulations. So be it cold brews, be it kombucha, chewing gum, chocolates, right? Just to name a few, even pet wellness products. We are positioning mushrooms as one of the star ingredients to give them that extra edge. So
Wow. That's really fascinating to know this, because the last time that I heard was on Shark Tank, and a lot was said and done there. And since then, I think you guys also have pivoted and evolved, because the first time when I had this conversation with Prithvi, it was I think you had the DIY kits, the spray only, and then you have now come to extracts, and further on customization is what you're talking about. And perhaps there is a lot of opportunities that will open up eventually, given that India is also sort of warming up to physical fitness, mental health, and all of this. So there is a genuine awareness that is now being built in the population. where they take health seriously along with mental health also to an extent. So it is only to state that going forward, perhaps the acceptance of mushrooms and everything that is attached with mushrooms will only increase in the coming years. And I genuinely hope that going forward we will also see among the spread in our food on our plate, we'll also have maybe 100 grams of mushroom, maybe once in two I mean twice in a week. Yeah, fingers crossed. Right. All right. So now I have one last question for you before I let you guys go, which is around consulting. So this is coming from my own side. So for a sustainability consultant like Carbon Mandal, what specific metrics do you think we should be tracking when evaluating the environmental impact of mushroom cultivation projects? And how do you measure and report on the circular economy benefits to corporate partners? I mean, now you have mentioned that you plan on working with F&B, food and beverage industries, or chewing gums and all of this, right? And it is only possible to communicate the sustainability performance by measuring the metrics. So
Right.
what metrics, according to you, that do you think that as consultants we should be measuring to communicate the true sustainable performance of mushrooms in its absolute truest form?
So I
Right.
think to start with, I think the first one is just having like even an organic certification of like, are your mushrooms being produced without any
Pesticides.
pesticides or anything? I
Yeah.
mean, just to start, like the most basic one, because that doesn't exist currently in India as
India
of
doesn't
Right.
have an organic certification for mushrooms yet.
mushrooms
Yeah.
yet. But I mean, that's one thing for sure, like at the top of my head. But in terms of the process, or maybe, the traceability of the bio waste, for example, the ragi straw that we're using or the sawdust, the traceability of that, where exactly are these being sourced from?
Right.
And are those sources actually, chemical free? Are they, where exactly? So I think there's traceability of that because that is the big part of the cultivation process. So having that metric
Right.
in, of course, the more the ones that are also across the board when it comes to plants. I mean, growing other crops is water management. So is that, are you actually
Water footprint.
water footprint, carbon footprint in that way? But I would say the traceability of the bio waste is a big thing. Of course, the organic certification itself, where like at least government bodies can have that and say, yeah, we are organic certified. Because one of the big things in the button mushroom industry is that a large number of them are not organic. I mean, almost all, I would say, very,
Yeah.
very few, a handful of them are organic. So that would be one. Two, I think also
So coming to the traceability, I think adding on that, you have to have an way to measure, like we were saying, no, how much of agri waste did you actually sort of utilize,
Right.
which you prevented from going into a landfill
Into
or
the
being
landfill.
burned.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Burning.
basically the waste utilization. First thing is that how much of waste have you utilized? Second is the other end of this, basically, of how much of the spent substrate or whatever you used to grow mushrooms, how much of that was turned into compost and returned back into the soil.
Soil again.
And there, if you're able to see, suppose, for example, if you're an integrated farm where you're supplying your spent substrate to another farm where they're growing something, how much of the reliance on pesticides or fertilizers have you been able to reduce with the ability to give them this input,
Right.
right?
Right.
Then another thing would be like if it's a more community, this is possibly for a more community-oriented farm, let's say in the Govardhan type of system.
Hmm.
What measurable health parameters have you shifted by increasing that consumption of mushrooms in your ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
It's more like a triple bottom line approach, right?
Yeah.
People,
People
profit,
profit
and
planning.
planet,
Yeah.
right? So from a people's perspective, I would say how many jobs you created, right? In how many of the local women or people from marginalized communities have you been able to include in your organization?
Hmm.
How have you impacted the health of your local community, right? Have you been able to increase their fiber intake or reduce the instances of XYZ disease, right? So some impact in the health and livelihood of the local community needs to be also measured. And like I said earlier, how much of waste have you utilized? And after utilizing the waste, what happens to the rest of the stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah. Pen substrate, how was it used and how much of it is actually put back into the soil? And Then the next step of putting back into the soil, what effect did it have? Did it reduce their inputs?
Yeah.
Did it improve the productivity? So I think these are a few metrics that I think
traceability being one, tracing of the entire substrate to the end user, entire value chain, tracing of that, both upstream and the downstream supply chain.
Right.
Two that you mentioned is lack of certification here in India, but does it exist outside India? Are there certifying bodies outside India?
Yes.
Okay. But India does not have its own in-house or certifying body yet.
The body is there.
Hmm.
They used to take application for mushroom farms, but they later realized that their certification process and evaluation criteria is for soil-based plant cultivation. So they have not really re-looked at their process.
The entire methodology of your way of cultivating is not
It's
a
not the
part of
same
that.
as plant.
Yeah, it's completely different. So basically, they put a full stop on it. So till the time someone doesn't come up with a new evaluation criteria, this is not going to go anywhere.
Right. And the third one that you mentioned, I think that does exist, like tracing of sustainable performance, water, carbon emissions, even ESG. When we talk about the triple P bottom line, then right, the kind of impact it has on the society overall. So I think we in the last maybe 1.5 hours we have had a lot of points covered. I think there are much more to cover within the mushroom world. But Prithvi, Jashid, thank you so much for answering them.
Thank you.
All honesty.
Thank you for having
Yeah,
me.
I know that you do the namaste thing, right? No, yeah, namaste. Thank you so much. I think I did have a great time, asking these questions to you, and the kind of answers that you have provided me with is really insightful, and it definitely showcases the kind of interest both of you have in this very topic of mushrooms. There is so much insights that you guys have, and it clearly shows that you spent a lot of time researching, reading, and also experimenting with this thing. So that clearly shows. And I wish you both the best. And I will perhaps make a purchase for one of those extracts, which is the lion's maize one. Perhaps because I believe I can maybe shift from caffeine to that.
Absolutely.
It should help me. I can try it for a couple of months time, right? But thank you so much, Prithvi, Jashid. So for those who have enjoyed this podcast, you can reach out to Prithvi and Jashid on their LinkedIn profile, and they have a website as well where you can go and make your purchase for the DIY kits and also the extracts that are available. Any last words, Prithvi, Jashid, before I let you go?
In mushroom?
Yeah.
Well, in mushrooms we trust, and we continue trusting in mushrooms, trust in the natural world, and things will blossom, I guess.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
thank you.